Oh, hello there, and welcome to the attic of the dollhouse for another reading from Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. That's right. Now, if you've been here before, before we dive into the fairy tales, we like to set the mood straight. So let's get started by getting them lights out, getting that fire crackling element going, and playing us a little bit of Crossharp. That's right. Gotta get that mood set straight here. All right. Hey, how you doing tonight? I hope you're doing well. That's right. Or maybe it's the morning where you are, afternoon. Who's to say? I hope you're having a good day regardless. Any event, what are we reading tonight? You may be wondering. Well, this day, you may be saying, asking yourself there more properly. Oh, the heavenly wedding. We're going to start out. But we got a couple of shorties here, so there's going to be several. All right. Oh, the heavenly wedding. A poor peasant boy one day heard the priest say in church that whosoever desired to enter the kingdom of heaven must always go straight onward. So he set out and walked continually straight onward over hill and valley without ever turning aside rather. At length his way led him into a great town and into the midst of a church where just at that time God's service was being performed. Now when he beheld all the magnificence of this, he thought he had reached heaven, sat down and rejoiced with his whole heart. And when the service was over and the clerk bade him go out, he replied, "No, I will not go out again. I am glad to be in heaven at last." So the clerk went to the priest and told him that there was a child in the church who would not go out again, because he believed he was in heaven. And the priest said, "If he believes that, we will leave him inside." And so he went to him and asked if he had any inclination to work. And "Yes," said the little fellow, "I am accustomed to work, but I will not go out of heaven again." So he stayed in the church, and when he saw how the people came and knelt and prayed to Our Lady with blessed child, Jesus, which was carved in wood, he thought, "That is a good God," and said, "Dear God, how thin you are! And the people must certainly let you starve, but every day I will give you half my dinner." From this time forth, he every day took half his dinner to the image, and the image began to enjoy the food. When a week's time had gone by, people remarked that the image was growing larger and stout and strong, and wondered much. The priest also could not understand it, but he stayed in the church and followed the little boy about, and then saw how he shared his food with the Virgin Mary and how she accepted it. And some time after, the boy became ill, and for 8 days could not leave his bed. But as soon as he could get up again, the first thing he did was take his food to Our Lady. The priest followed him and heard him say, "Dear God, do not take it amiss that I have not brought you anything for such a long time, for I have been ill and could not get up." And then the image answered him and said, "I have seen thy good will, and that is enough for me. And next Sunday thou shalt go with me to the wedding." The boy rejoiced at this and repeated it to the priest, who begged him to go and ask the image if he too might be permitted to go. "No," answered the image, "thou alone." The priest wished to prepare him first and give him the Holy Communion, and the child was willing. And next Sunday, when the host came to him, he fell down and died, and was at the eternal wedding. Ooh. And that has been God's food there. All right, and the next one, no, that one was the heavenly wedding. I was looking in the wrong part of the book. All right, now we're going to read God's food. There was once upon a time now two sisters, one of whom had no children and was rich, and the other had five and was a widow, and so poor that she no longer had food enough to satisfy herself and her children. In her need, therefore, she went to her sister and says, my children are suffering, my children and I are suffering, rather, the greatest hunger, and thou art rich, and give me a mouthful of bread. The very rich sister was as hard as a stone, and said, I myself have nothing in the house, and drove away the poor creature with harsh words. After some time, the husband of the rich sister came home, and was just going to cut himself a piece of bread. But when he made the first cut into the loaf, out flowed red blood. And when the woman saw that, she was terrified and told him what had occurred. He hurried away to help the widow and her children. But when he entered her room, he found her praying. And she had her two younger children in her arms, and three older ones were lying dead. He offered her food, but she answered, for earthly food have we no longer any desire. God has already satisfied the hunger of three of us, and he will hearken to our supplications likewise. Scarcely had the sister had she uttered these words, then the two little ones drew their last breath, whereupon her heart broke, and she sank down dead. And that has been God's food. So, what was that word there? Supplicate. Boy, I haven't said that one before or in a long time, if that was the case. Anyway, our next fairy tale, another little shorter, but a little bit longer here to take us out. Saint Joseph in the Forest. There was once upon a time a mother who had three daughters, the eldest of whom was rude and wicked, the second much better, although she had her faults, but the youngest was a pious, good child. The mother was, however, so strange that it was just the eldest daughter whom she loved most, and she could not bear the youngest. On this account, she often sent the poor girl out into the great forest in order to get rid of her, for she thought she would lose herself and never come back again. But the guardian angel, which every good child has, did not forsake her, but always brought her into the right path again. Once, however, the guardian angel behaved as if it were not there, and the child could not find her way out of the forest again. She walked on constantly until evening came, and then she saw a tiny light burning in the distance, ran up to it at once, and came to a little hut. As she knocked, the door opened, and she came to a second door, where she knocked again. An old man who had a snow-white beard and looked venerable, opened it to her, and he was no other than Saint Joseph. He said quite kindly, "Come, dear child, sit thyself on my little chair by the fire, and warm thyself, and I will fetch thee clear water if thou art thirsty. But here in the forest I have nothing for thee to eat but a couple of little roots, which thou must first scrape and boil." Saint Joseph gave her the roots, and the girl scraped them clean. Then she brought a piece of pancake and the bread that her mother had given her to take with her, mixed it all together in a pan, and cooked herself thick soup. When it was ready, Saint Joseph said, "I am so hungry, give me some of thy food." The child was quite willing and gave him more than she kept for herself, but God's blessing was with her, so that she was satisfied. When they had eaten, Saint Joseph says, "Now we will go to bed. I have, however, only one bed. Lie thyself in it. I will lie on the ground on the straw." "No," answered she, "stay in thy own bed. The straw is soft enough for me." Saint Joseph, however, took the child in his arms and carried her into the little bed, and there she said her prayers and fell asleep. Next morning when she awoke, she wanted to say good morning to St. Joseph, but she did not see him. She got up and looked for him, but could not find him anywhere. At last she perceived behind the door a bag of money so heavy that she could not carry it, and it was written that it was for the child who had slept there that night. On this she took the bag, despite not being able to carry it apparently, bounded away with it, and got safely to her mother. And as she gave her mother all the money, she could not help being satisfied with her. Next day, the second child also took a fancy to go into the forest, and her mother gave her a much larger piece of pancake and bread. It happened with her just as with the first child, and in the evening she came to St. Joseph's little hut, who gave her roots for a thick soup. And when it was ready, he likewise said to her, I am so hungry, give me some of thy food. And then the child said, Thou mayest have thy share. Afterwards, when St. Joseph offered her his bed and wanted to lie on the straw, she replied, No, lie down in the bed. There is plenty of room for both of us. And St. Joseph took her in his arms and put her in the bed, and lied himself on the straw. And in the morning, when the child awoke and looked for St. Joseph, he had vanished. But behind the door she found a little sack of money that was about as long as a hand, and on it was written that it was for the child who had slept there last night. So she took the little bag and ran home with it and took it to her mother, but she secretly kept 2 pieces for herself. The eldest daughter had by this time grown curious, and the next morning also insisted on going into the forest. Her mother gave her pancakes with her, as many as she wanted, and bread and cheese as well. In the evening she found St. Joseph in his little hut, just as the other 2 had found him. And when the soup was ready, and St. Joseph said, I am so hungry, give me some of thy food, the girl answered, Wait until I am satisfied. Then if there is anything left, thou shalt have it. She ate, however, nearly the whole of it, and St. Joseph had to scrape the dish. Afterwards, the good old man offered her his bed, and wanted to lie in the straw. But she took it without making any opposition, laid herself down in a little bed, and left the hard straw to the white-haired man. Next morning, when she awoke, St. Joseph was not to be found, but she did not trouble herself about it. She looked behind the door for a money bag, and she fancied something was lying on the ground, but as she could not very well distinguish what it was, she stooped down and examined it closely, but it remained hanging to her nose, and when she got up again, she saw to her horror that it was a second nose, which was hanging fast to her own. And then she began to scream and howl, and that did no good, as she was forced to see it always on her nose, for it stretched out so far. And then she ran out and screamed without stopping till she met St. Joseph, at whose feet she fell and begged until out of pity he took the nose off again and gave her 2 pennies. When she got home, her mother was standing before the door and asked, What hast thou been given to thee? And then she lied and says, A great bag of money, but I have lost it on the way. Lost it, cried the mother. Oh, but we will soon find it again, and took her by the hand and wanted to seek it with her. At first she began to cry, and did not wish to go, but at last she went. On the way, however, so many lizards and snakes broke loose on both of them that they did not know how to save themselves. And at last they stung the wicked child to death, and they stung the mother in the foot because she had not brought her up a better. And that has been St. Joseph in the Forest, God's Food, and the Heavenly Wedding, from a Grimm's Complete Fairy tales. All right, I have an affiliate link for this book if you want to grab your own copy and support the channel in the bargain. Well, I'd appreciate it if you do, and I imagine those that are publishing the Grimm's fairy tale book would appreciate it as well. Here and all there. I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight. There was some quick shorties there, a little bit dark in some places, but hey, that's how we like them, isn't it? They don't tell stories like that anymore. Well, we had some kids going to heaven, that happens sometimes. It can't be helped But in any event, that's that. So let's take us out a little bit of more blues harp there. All right, hey there. I always want to say thanks for joining us. Kisses to your missus, a tip of my hat to your old cat, and I hope to see you again sometime soon now, so you better come on back. You hear? You understand? I hope you do. All right, you take care of yourselves now.